One of my bosses used to say, do you want to be a postman with a tie or do you want to be an account manager? There is a big difference there. Build that brand. Don't be in a rush to create some logo and all and say that, okay, I've started this company. I know it's great product and great service or whatever. When it comes to branding, it's always a long-term thing. Agency is a right combination of creativity and strategy. And if you don't fight for what you believe in and convince the client to take that bold step, at times, you would never be respected.
Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with IndieFolio. Today we have Sharad VK with us, who was the marketing director of Century Financial. Today he's an independent consultant, but he started his career over 2 decades ago, and he spent a large portion of it in the agency side. He talks about his experience, doing account management in an agency, learning more about account management, and we extract a lot of insights for anybody who's curious to build their career in the advertising side. We also talk about going to the brand side and how that is very much different. Thanks a lot for your time, Sharad, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast, and look forward to some interesting conversations.
Absolutely. I think, a lot of times people are confused about advertising versus the brand side. And I think I'm very excited to unpack that conversation with you. But before we get into that, can you take us back to your time in probably college or your earlier, years in, your life where you decided that you wanted to pick a career in marketing? Like, how did that happen? What inspired you?
Sure. See, as a child, I was always a little oriented towards creative. At some point in time when I was in my mid school and high school, I wanted to pursue art as my career.
Okay.
So I was exploring the art courses, and I was always drawn to colors, brands, ads, and most of these things. Basically, anything that looked attractive, I used to get attracted to, and I had a flair for a little bit of, I don't know whether it's creative thinking at that point in time, but a little bit of sense of design, color, and everything. So that's where I gave all the preliminary art exams and all. But then, in those days, there were just 2 good art colleges back then in Bombay. And getting into them was like so crazy. You had a whole lot of people from all across India coming, giving the entrance this test and whatever assignments they had. So, it was extremely difficult. So I was dejected once or twice that I tried. Then I started reading more about what else I can do with my whole orientation towards art and this design thing. I read an article ages back in Times of India about a career in advertising and how it could probably bridge the gap between a person who wants to be a part of the creative industry, yet need not have a creative kind of there are other faculties you can get into. You need not just be a graphic designer or an art director. There is something called an account management that you can get into, a client services, where you are a part of the process, but obviously you're not driving it as a designer, but you are a part of the whole process and you will have your inputs there. So somewhere it triggered the whole thought that I should give this career a kind of a chance and see where I fit in. And that's where by default, when I completed my graduation, I saw an ad for a small ad agency. It was started by a gentleman who had worked in Brazil, and he started this small agency. I said, let me go and meet this person. We spoke, we clicked, I started working, and it was some very basic clients that we started working on, doing basic design work of stationery and everything. But somewhere it gave me a lot of happiness and satisfaction that, okay, somewhere this is a career I still want to explore. After a year with him, I got an opportunity to interview at a larger agency. So this was Archis for me, BBDO. It's a BBDO agency. I somehow managed to impress my account director who took the interview. Somewhere he understood that I was passionate about advertising a little bit. I did have a little groundwork that I had done, some readings that I had done about it, and read some books on advertising, especially David Ogilvy. So I think I spoke the right things there without knowing much, obviously, but a little bit of reading here and there helped me. And they gave me an opportunity to come on board as a trainee. And that's when the whole career started in advertising, and it started from there.
I want to talk a little bit more about your stint in advertising. So usually it's recommended to people that if you want to build a career in marketing, start on the service side, start on the agency side. So I wanted to know from your point of view, if I want to become a CMO one day, head of marketing one day, would you propose why if would you propose spending the first 2 years in an agency, and if so, why? What is the pros and cons of being on the agency side?
Sure. See, earlier agency used to be a great training ground for understanding brand, how the brands are built, the value of communication, how brand communication plays an important role, and that was a great thing. Not that subsequently, if you work on a very good demanding FMCG brand, I had a great exposure on certain brands like Visa and Godrej, where research played a very important role. None of our campaign strategies were done without the agency actually attending a couple of research sessions they used to conduct, and we used to do our own dipstick as well. So with this kind of a balanced kind of a training where you are attuned to understanding the basics of brand communication as well as research, and how everything has to emanate from a client's perspective or a potential customer's perspective. What he looking for, what are his aspirations, how does the brand fit into his life, or what is a need gap that we need to identify where the brand could be plugged in. So all this marrying the whole aspect of creativity, branding, communication with research, which consumer insights is a great learning ground for you to prepare for being a complete marketing person. It's not just about being a marketing person where it's driven by numbers and all that. It's also the other aspects which play a very important role in making you a complete marketing person. And that's, I think, an advantage of starting off with an agency vis-a-vis being a pure marketing person, where obviously you have your merits, you are very much consumer insights driven, numbers driven, but the aspect of brand building and understanding the value of brand and how the brand can connect with the consumer, that grounding I think you get more through an ad agency.
100%. I feel the amount of exposure you get in such a short period of time to multiple use cases really sharpens your first principles. So I
Another
think that,
point I'll add over
yeah,
here with agency gives you a distinct advantage is you work across categories.
yeah,
You work on different brands, different categories. So the perspective that you get, it's FMCG at one end, it's a financial product at the other end, it's a tech product at the other end. Some are B2B, some are B2C. So you get a wide understanding of consumer psyche across consumer product categories, and this is a great learning. So tomorrow you are heading a marketing for whichever company, you have a good grounding and an understanding of how a consumer would think in that particular category.
absolutely. As I said, I think your first principles and your intuition is keeps on getting stronger because you've seen so many use cases play out.
Yeah.
Usually on the brand side, that cycle is much longer because you're doing much more than just communications.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit more about account management. If let's say somebody here is and is curious to join the agency side, I think account management is an area, as you said, for somebody who would like to stay close to creative but also drive results for the client. Now, usually account management, people think it's like client servicing, passing the parcel, etc. Right? So, could you give us a little bit understanding of account management 101, and what does a good account manager really do in a project?
Yeah. Yeah. So typically, account management has been misunderstood. In fact, one of my bosses used to say, do you want to be a postman with a tie, or do you want to be an account manager? There is a big difference there. So you're not just taking something from the client and pushing it into the agency with a creative guy, half baked things. You need to be as knowledgeable about the brand or the product that you are managing as an account manager as much as your marketing manager on the other side does. So only then can you add value, your insights. One of the key things about account manager is the way you write your brief. The way you write your brief actually can inspire a creative to the next level, but your briefs have to be based on good solid insights. You need to understand the market, the competition, the consumer. You need to do your own study, and that's where you actually apply the whole knowledge of everything that you want to know about the brand, and that's something that makes a difference. A great input comes a great output. So your briefs is one of the key things. Barring that, account management obviously is also building a great rapport with the client, going above and beyond client expectations always. And so these are the things which are there. But what really makes a difference is how knowledgeable you are about that brand or the product that you are managing or servicing. That really can impress the client, and you can really make a difference to the brand that you are handling as an account manager.
Absolutely. I wished more account managers were like that, because I think often the friction is so low. People just jump in, kind of pass the parcel, and then they become the punching bag, because at the end of the day it's their accountability, it's their it's in their focus areas to actually get the project to the end line with everybody happy, right? With your team happy, with the client being happy. But I think often it kind of gets sidelined. How does generally career progression look like within an agency? Because often what happens is, I've seen people spend 1-2 years in an agency, or maybe 3-4 years, and they move to the brand side. But I think in your case you went to multiple kinds of creative consulting in your I think almost for 2 decades, if I'm not wrong. Kind of
Yeah.
tried various things.
Right.
So could you tell us how does that look like, for somebody who spent almost 2 decades in advertising? If you start as an account manager, how does the career progression look like? What are you doing as a leader in an agency after spending several years?
See, I think initially when you start as a trainee or an account executive, it's lots more operations management. It's a lot about getting the information from the client and translating it, supervising, getting the work done. It's a lot about coordination and operational thing. As you grow up the hierarchy, then you will have juniors who will manage the operational bits, and here's where your input becomes more important in terms of more the strategic value that you can add onto the account. And this is a skill you hone over a period of time, and you get a far better perspective, and you are actually talking the same language that the brand manager or a marketing manager would want to hear. And that's where you kind of look at it. So it's basically split into the initial years being very operationally driven, and the subsequent years that you spend in advertising are more strategically driven in terms of what value you can add to the brand. Yeah. So here's, and typically, I think earlier the advertising, when I started the career, the hierarchies were of way too much. You started right as a trainee, an account executive, a junior account executive, an account executive, account supervisor, account manager, group account manager. By the time you're a group account manager, you had some team underneath you to manage all the ops or account supervisor level, and then you become an account director where you are responsible for the P&L of that particular group of accounts that you hold, and then you become a group account director, and so on and so forth. I think the current day agencies work much more leaner, and the hierarchies are much lesser. People kind of grow much more faster, or typically move out after a couple of years in the agency. But at the when I was in advertising, those were the heydays of advertising agencies, where people love to be a part of agencies. People used to stick to agencies and grow to a certain level, to right from an AE to a group account director to ultimately a vice president. So the one saw a good career progression, different set of accounts, different number of accounts added on to your group, number of people. So it was exciting at every stage, and there was a good hierarchy then. I think the current day agencies are much more leaner, and probably the levels are much lesser. So that's what it is now.
Do you feel that, like, in that context, the more senior you get and the more good you get at your job in account management, the number of accounts you manage increases, or is it the value of the accounts, or is it both?
See, it's actually both. It's number of accounts, and there are certain marquee accounts which are handed over to you, which are big in terms of billings, which are big in terms of the whole sheer amount of quantum of work as well. And then you also get to work on globally aligned brands and accounts which are there, especially if you're working with MNC agencies. So these are the kind of things. And typically, once you reach that level, you are actually talking to a marketing head almost in terms of the same level of understanding. You are adding some value there which the client would really, and this calls for not only a good understanding of the brand, the consumer, the this thing, it also understanding the latest trends, the media trends, what's happening, and how can we break the clutter, what creative use of media that we can do, or what strategy or that we need to develop, or what new niche we can look for in terms of growing the product category. So you're actually contributing to that level where you can also advise on brand extension in a certain new arena, or probably adding a sub brand. So you are actually adding so much value in terms of the client's business and marketing, that you're actually thinking in line with the marketing manager in terms of how do we ultimately grow the brand.
100%. After spending so many years, why is it that you decided that you want to go to the brand side from the agency side? And how can somebody prep themselves to know how to make that transition?
See, I think by and large, around my time and even now, I think most of the advertising people, after a point of time that they spend in advertising, you aspire to actually own a brand and manage it complete end to end. Because no matter what, as an agency partner, you are only involved in a certain aspect of brand building and marketing. You're not involved in the full spectrum of marketing. You're still not dealing with the sales team. You're still not getting the sales numbers day in and day out, though clients do share certain numbers, but then you still don't have, you're not privy to the whole aspect of brand building, right from the production, the sales, and the other aspects of typically how a company would operate, with the marketing person being at the center of it all. So that kind of ownership and that kind of this thing is something that you kind of aspire for, or rather some people do aspire for. And during my time, it was quite a aspirational thing that, okay, after a couple of years in the agency, you move on to the client side as a brand manager and independently handle that brand and grow that brand. Yeah. What's very important here is you need to think like a marketing manager. You need to get that kind of an information from the client which will help you add more value to the brand. Like, why not go and talk to the brand manager or a marketing head saying that, okay, can we analyze the sales trends? Why has it fallen? Can we look at the competitor numbers? Is there some niche that we can occupy which maybe nobody's looked at in the category? So if you are inquisitive about these things, and if you engage at that level, by and large you are getting yourself prepared for making the transition from an advertising to the marketing side. And you need to interact with their sales head. You need to get the market numbers from them and the market sentiment from them. What are the consumers thinking about the brand? So these are all things which probably help you prepare for getting a holistic understanding of marketing. And once you gain that, you are then ready to make that transition from an agency to the client side.
Any particular thing you saw in Century Financial which kind of prompted you to take that leap?
See, I'll tell you what, my career largely has been focused on a lot of banking and financial clients. I started my career in me. I was the youngest guy when they launched Visa in India, and I was just an account executive. So I got a good exposure there. Then throughout my career, when I was in Oman, I worked on Bank Muscat, which was one of the largest banks there. Then I moved to Dubai. I was involved in a small boutique agency which used to handle the entire BTL and branch branding for one of the largest banks over here, Emirates NBD. So banks have been a part of my advertising, so to say, career as key clients. So when Century opportunity came about, it was something right up my alley. It's a financial services product, which I'm far more comfortable. I've got the maximum stints, or the brands that I've worked on have been in the banking and financial domain. So by default, that's how I said I need to make that transition.
Fantastic. You've spoken a lot about brand, and now that you're consulting a lot of younger companies, I wanted to ask you, what's your general take with branding when it comes to younger companies who have shoestring budgets? What tends to happen is that I would always think that I'll have ROI on this brand activity 3 years from now, but till then my runway will be over. I don't even know if I'll be, alive. So
Yeah.
if I wanted to do branding for my young company, what's a good way to do it on a low budget?
See, typically the startups have this challenge any which ways. But then what's important is firstly define what you are looking at before you build that brand. I mean, don't be in a rush to create some logo and all and say that, okay, I've started this company. I know it's great product and great service or whatever. Let me just put some name to it and let me just put a logo to it because I need to have some branding out there. Go back to the drawing board and try and understand firstly what are the core, what need gap are you filling, what is the core brand belief, are you
Hmm.
how do you want to position the brand, and what is it the consumer is looking at? Am I filling that need gap? That's very important. What will the brand's overall stance be, and how will we communicate? Should we be always be the fun kind of a thing, or should we be very serious and matter of fact and this thing? So all these minor nuances no will make a difference in terms of how the brand comes across once you start doing some activity. I know the challenge is always that you will never have big budgets till some series of fundings happen, but then at least you put a good foundation there and start doing small things on your social media and all that, that will put the brand out there, put the tonality, put the look and the whole thing, which is so unified that it all fits into what your vision for the brand is, what exactly is in line with what your consumer target audience would be comfortable with. So once you have this raw material, you do the basic activities with minimal spends, but then once you have the funding and you're ready to scale it up, you have a great brand and a story and a narrative which could be really put out there.
100%. 100%. But how do you measure any? What's your measurement metric? Are there any KPIs which I can use to actually track if I'm doing a good job or not?
See, when it comes to branding, it's always a long term thing. You can't have an immediate ROI on a branding. Branding is something which will pay you in a long run. There can't be any immediate ROIs. But then it's about, owning some space, owning some color, owning something that is there. Like, I'll give you an example of Century Financial. When I did the rebranding, we did an analysis that most of our competitors in our category, when it comes to brokerage, CFD, investments, and all, were either using a blue or a red or something. So we also analyzed what are the color most of the competition is using. Then we identified yellow is not being used by anyone. Why not own yellow in this category? So we built made yellow the primary color. Now what happened is we got many potential customers saying we saw your ad here, there, whatever, but then in reality it was some other brand, some other category using yellow. But then in our category we own that color yellow. Anything yellow they used to think it's Century. So
Right.
basically it's like about doing your groundwork and understanding and owning certain things. Like I know Red Bull is too big a brand, but then it's all about sports and adventure. Something it's so identified with that so try and that would be your best ROI in terms of at least owning certain space or owning a particular color, look, thought. So you're occupying a mind space in a consumer when it comes to that particular category. So that's
Absolutely.
very important. And I think that's the best ROI that you can look for branding in the short term.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. I think, you know, really thinking hard and picking that one thing and then being consistent with that one thing
Yeah.
really, really helps you. I want to now, ask a question on behalf of, I think, somebody who may want to join a marketing team, may want to work alongside somebody like you. Generally, when you are hiring, what are the kind of traits you look for in a team member?
I think one of the things is always being inquisitive, trying to learn, trying to know more. And one of the important things is having a point of view. It's very important that you should have a point of view. Fine, it might be wrong, but then if you have a point of view and you are backing it with your own thoughts, which have probably been researched, or there is some backing to it, I would rank that person higher than the others who's just kind of drifting away and maybe talking without much of substance in it. you know so one is okay, before you go for any interview or anything, be prepared, read about that category, read about that product, read about the industry, and get your understanding there. And then have a point of view, have at least an intelligent discussion on that particular product or subject or whatever. That's very important.
Any skills I need to over index if I'm going on the agency side, and any skill I need to over index if I'm going on the brand side, or is it the same?
See, agency side, it's always about, agency is always leaning more towards the creative, because that's so as long as you understand brands, some great creative campaigns that we've been done, you read about them, you talk about them, you get excited by anything that has gone viral, and there is some examples that you have to share. So that's very important, because at least by that way you know that okay, here's a person who's following trends, who understands, because what is advertising, it's all about understanding what are the current trends and how the brand can leverage those trends. So it's about the creative mindset, it's about some great brand case studies that you have been exposed or you read about, and those are important. From a marketing standpoint, I think marketing typically has two key things. I One of the key things in marketing is the whole orientation towards ROI or numbers. If you are a numbers person, or if you have been a keen observer of consumer, the likes, behaviors, the little bit about understanding of consumer, how a product can build itself into a complex market, a little bit more on research, more on numbers, is what I would rank higher on the marketing side, while a bit more leaning towards the creativity, the aspects which are more higher on the agency side. Because even agency want to hire people who can work along with the creative guys. They are not easy to work with. So they need people who are equally driven by a great creative product and not just be numbers driven. Then the whole equation works with the core
Right.
team and the creative team. While in marketing, sometimes it has to be what the CEO thinks. It's all about numbers, it's all about delivery, it's all about
Right.
ROI. So the numbers orientation is higher there.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think it's also agencies a lot more fast paced. I sometimes feel because you have to be kind of thinking on the feet quite a lot. While I think brand calls have to be much more thought through and comprehensive because they've got long tail impact. It's not a campaign which gets over tomorrow.
Absolutely.
If I could add in, because you've been at the both sides of this, and I'd love to get your perspective on this. Generally, I think as you said, there was a time when agencies had a certain kind of a reputation, certain kind of an involvement with brands. But since then, I feel the relationship has been diluted. That's at least what the veterans tell me. Because I feel today the landscape is very different. So much work needs to happen. The brief you spoke about, used to be like 4 or 5 briefs every quarter, then maybe every year. Now it is 4 or 5 briefs a day. So nobody's really getting the time to go deep into it, and because of which the agencies maybe are also a little bit blank. The bar to entry is also very low now, so anybody can just become an agency today. So there's a lot of clutter, and that's why there's a lot of tiff. So what I'm trying to just kind of understand is, I think the agency founder is losing their understanding on how to be relevant. So if I could ask you, what according to you separates a good agency from a great agency, that'll be awesome to hear from you.
See, I think a good agency is a right combination of creativity and strategy. That is a good balance that is there. Some agencies are creative for the sake of being creative, but then they don't really have much of strategic thinking or insights there. So some agency that can balance it really well, that's more important. It's also understanding the latest trends, what's vibing, what are the new areas that one can look at. So again, there is no right or wrong as such. I think the best thing is a good or a great agency you only discover after working with them, how good their team is, how good their thinking is, how good their creative product is at the end of the day. So I would say that a good blend of strategy and creative definitely makes for a good winner agency than someone who's just being creative, or some agencies which are just kind of like a yes man to the client and just deliver whatever that the client asks them to deliver. But then that in the long run will not work, because ultimately, if you don't, as I always say, if you don't have your own point of view, and if you don't fight for what you believe in, and try and convince the client to take that bold step at times, you would never be respected.
Absolutely. It's been, I think a fantastic chat so far, Sharad. We are almost at time. So I'd have to ask you a parting thought now. If let's say I want to become a, marketing leader one day, and maybe I'm in the, young 20s, I'm, in the earlier part of my career. And if I had the vision to become a marketing leader, what are the quick wins I need to have, in my earlier years, which will help me become a leader one day? Any advice, any parting thoughts?
Quick wins in terms of
What do I need to do to be considered a leader one day by a large org?
organization. I think one of the things that you need to start doing is you're reading a lot, trying to gain a lot of knowledge, and knowledge that goes beyond your domain, across rather. And I think nowadays it's all about showcasing your knowledge through articles, blogs, so that you come across as, not immediately but subsequently, an expert on a certain subject area or domain. And that kind of builds visibility, that kind of gets people to notice you, and that's surely one of the things that will help you grow much faster, and probably get great opportunities to be at the top soon.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sharad. I think I had a pleasure talking to you. I hope you had a good time as well.
Same, yeah, lovely talking to you, and great to go back into my earlier career days and remember certain great things. And I think I'll be of a little bit of an inspiration and some good insights that I can share with budding professionals in advertising and marketing space. Thanks.
Most definitely, and always a pleasure. For everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much for staying till the end. If you'd like to hear another marketing leader, please subscribe to our channels, and a new episode will come out very, very soon. Bye bye.